Welcome back everybody to another episode of the GC Inform. I'm Snowy, otherwise known as Count Fracula, bringing you a rather long episode of the news because there's a lot of things I want to talk about. We're going to start today with Sony, and they have had their new Nintendo Direct style thing. The first one of those called the State of Play, which is something I don't like that name. I think that's a bit silly. They've had their first State of Play yesterday, and quite a few announcements have been made, and surprisingly, a lot of them are VR related. It just goes to show that Sony haven't given up on the VR space just yet. They're not bowing out. Whether that's for good or ill, well, that's down to your personal opinion. I personally think the idea of having a viable VR platform on console, something that's a lot more accessible, is definitely a good move. And glad to see it's still being supported with things like a VR mode for No Man's Sky, several other actual odd VR games, and a Five Nights at Freddy's VR game, which is... I will not be playing that. And as well as that, there will be an Iron Man VR title. As yet, not a huge amount of detail in that, but an Iron Man VR game sounds pretty fucking sweet, I'm not gonna lie, I would play that. So hopefully it comes to a VR system that I own. But yeah, that sounds pretty damn good. We've also had a new look at the remaster of Crash Team Racing, and yeah, it looks pretty fucking sweet, not gonna lie. I am very much a fan of some of these older games coming with a new fresh look and hopefully better controls. Yeah, Crash Team Racing is looking better than it ever has. It will also include stuff from Crash Nitro Kart, if I remember correctly. If I think I got the correct one. It'll come with some stuff from another Crash racing game in it. And also, PlayStation players exclusively will get a little add-on where they get to play as the low-poly original versions of Crash Bandicoot and Cortex, which is a nice little sweet add-on, an interesting incentive to get you to want to play on a PlayStation rather than the other consoles. Other than that, we've had trailers for Gone Home again. Not Gone Home, that's a completely different thing. Days Gone, that's what I meant. How did I get that mixed up? And Mortal Kombat 11. And we've also had a trailer for a very interesting looking game called Observation, where you are playing as a space station. It looks really cool. Go look that up. But yeah, that's the State of Play. Basically, it's a Nintendo Direct in all but name, but it's for Sony. So, cool stuff has been announced. We'll move on to other sort of weird gaming related announcements. Apple. Now those are things that don't normally go together, Apple and gaming, but Apple are apparently wanting to change that. And they are bringing a new game subscription service to iOS and Mac in the autumn. It's going to be very, very much what you think it is. It's a subscription model for games. Think things like Humble Monthly maybe, or more closely maybe things like Game Pass or Origin Access if you just want to shoot yourself in the head. But it's a service that will be coming to all the iOS devices. It will be coming to Apple TV, and it will be coming to Macs. Yeah, and iPads as well, surprisingly. Not bad. Interesting way to play games on your iPad that I wouldn't mind, depending on how well it's implemented. We will be a bit restricted, I would have thought, based on the hardware that you're using as to what games you'd be able to play, but they are promising a library of games. Whether or not they'll be device restricted, it's not really mentioned yet. But it's going to be available in over 150 countries, and if one of those countries is your country, then if you really want to game on an Apple device, it might be a bit more viable in the autumn. Speaking of the Apple Arcade though, a game that actually I know is going to be coming out and will be announced, has been announced for it today or yesterday, is the 5th Shantae game. Now Shantae is a game it's a series that originally started on the Game Boy Color, and an original copy of that game is quite expensive to get a hold of. Apparently a cartridge costs about £300 to get a hold of, so that's a lot of money. But yeah, it's the last Shantae game, Half Genie Hero, was very good, actually. It's all sort of platform, 2D, kind of like that style of game, but it's all very well done and very artistically coherent and nice. So I'm really looking forward to whatever they come up with for the 5th one. But it's not just going to be exclusive to Apple Arcade, thank fuck for that. It's also coming to basically everything. It's coming to Apple Arcade, PC, Switch, Xbox, PS4. Good. Nintendo now. And yeah, if you are a fan of the Switch, then this might be good news for you. But if you've not got a Switch, or, well, to be honest, just get a Switch because they're good. But anyway, Nintendo have announced that there's going to be 2 new, well, they're not announced, it's been leaked, and now it's sort of been confirmed that there will be 2 new versions of the Switch coming out this year. This rumour was originally started by the Wall Street Journal, who revealed or disclosed that it would be announced properly at E3 and then available towards the end of the year. Now we've had a few more details come out about them. There's going to be a more budget-friendly model of the Switch, and there's also going to be a slightly higher-end model than the standard, which is interesting. It's not a precedent by Nintendo by any means, because they've done this with the DS, well, the 3DS, because they had the 3DS and the new 3DS and the 2DS and the new 2DS. And the new 2DS XL, and the 3DS XL, and the new 3DS XL. Yeah, there's been a lot of versions of the 3DS. Rumours about the cheaper version are abound, but chief among which is that it will be A, slightly smaller, B, slightly more rugged, and C, get rid of some slightly more redundant features such as vibration. Vibration is nice, but there's very few games where it's actually necessary. Get rid of a few of those features and that will bring down the cost, but they're making it more rugged theoretically to make it more kid-friendly. If you remember the 2DS when it first came out, it was a brick basically. Very rugged thing, because a kid could probably snap a 3DS if they were so inclined to do. So I can kind of see where that's coming from. Rumours about the performance of the so-called enhanced version, which is apparently to appeal to more avid gamers, whatever that means in this instance, is that it won't be a particularly significant performance improvement over this first iteration of the Switch. However, they could use this as an opportunity to get rid of several kinks that have been in the Switch. There was that famous boot launch exploit thing that people could brick their Switches with in like not long after it came out actually, and there's several things that I would personally improve. Like if I were going to make a pro version, I'd maybe make the vibration a little bit better, and there's things like the kickstand as well, amongst other things that I would just sort of iron the kinks out of. And also I would add more storage. 64 gig, is it 60? No, it's 32 on the actual base Switch, is not enough. Not by a long shot, guys. Anyway, that's all rumours. We don't know anything for certain properly yet, but several Nintendo sources have spoken to several outlets, including Eurogamer amongst others, about this kind of, about all these rumours about the new kind of Switch. So hopefully it'll be a thing, because I'd quite like to see something more aimed at kids for the Switch. I'd also like to see something more aimed at the avid gamers. While the sort of fracturing of consoles, it looks a bit odd, but I think in some ways it works. I don't know. What do you think though? Let me know in the comments. Last thing I'm going to talk about today then, and it is going to be Bethesda having a rather funny and interesting little jab at the Epic Games Store. They have said that Doom Eternal and Rage 2 will definitely be coming to Steam, and this is obviously a jab at the Epic Games Store after several high-profile and less high-profile games have signed exclusivity deals with the Epic Games Store. Whether you like it or lump it, it has happened, and those games will be exclusive to that store for pretty much a year. That is the general the general length of their exclusivity contracts. So to see a publisher, especially a big publisher, outright shove it away, much like CD Projekt Red did a few weeks ago, is an interesting step. Whether or not those games will still be on the Epic Games Store, I don't know, but this is an interesting step from a company who decided they were going to forgo Steam for Fallout 76, instead selling the PC version exclusively either through a physical copy or their own launcher. And while there is the obvious argument, and in fact the argument I've just made, that it is a response to the Epic Games Store, it may also be partly a response to that. We don't know exact sales figures of Fallout 76, but I can imagine they weren't amazing. Certainly probably not as much as they would have wanted, thanks to the critical paddling both from actual games critics and from users that the game received. So I can imagine, especially when you have an even lower sort of install base to advertise to, because you can't advertise on a client that the game isn't on, I can imagine the PC sales are a lot lower than they would have wanted, so I can imagine this is also a response to that. So, you know, if you are one of the people who will not buy a PC game unless it's on Steam, whether or not you think that's a good idea or not, whatever, it's your own choice, it's your own life, then rest assured, Doom Eternal and Rage 2 will be coming to Steam specifically. That brings us to the end then of this episode of the GC Informer, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like, subscribe and share whatever you fancy. Our social links are down in the description with a link to our Discord. Stay tuned though to GameCast for news, reviews, podcasts, lots of great gaming content, and I will hope to see you soon for something else.